Welcome to the Delicious Alignment Body Love and Food Freedom podcast, where we talk about all things law of attraction, learning how to love your body and your food, feeling your way to what you want instead of endless diets and struggle, and allowing more health and wellness into your life. I'm your host, Rhonda Ryder, author of Delicious Alignment, How 25 Women Learn to Love and Transform Their Bodies Using Abraham Hicks and the Law of Attraction. Today, I'm excited to share my interview with Law of Attraction author Karen Money Williams, where we discuss her spiritual, health, and law of attraction journey, including how a cancer diagnosis many years ago led her to explore new ways of looking at life and dealing with her emotions. Karen's story of how she enjoys her wellness and happiness today and what she does to keep expanding on those yummy emotions and states of being is both entertaining and enlightening. Karen and I met over 12 years ago near Orlando, Florida, when I attended one of her Abraham Hicks discussion groups at her home, and she's been a very special person in my life ever since. I recommend checking out Karen's Facebook group, Abraham Fun, and her many books, including Positive Thinking on Steroids, The Startling Statements of Abraham Hicks, and How Life Works, Things I Learned at Abraham's Knee. Enjoy the interview. You were my first mentor and still my mentor, and you edited my book. Oh my goodness.
That was so proud of that. I am so proud to be involved with your book. I'll tell you, girl, I love your book and I love everything you've done since the book, incorporating the book and just everything with the delicious alignment. Yeah. That is terrific.
Yes. That's right. You were part of that. You helped me. I just wanted your eyes on the book, like, Karen, if there's anything I'm saying, misrepresenting Abraham Hicks on anything. And, we had lovely, discussions, and you just having your eyes on that and your input just made me feel so comfortable, because I felt, and you still are, you're my go-to Abraham expert. So having said all of that, yeah, tell me your story. Even if I've heard it before, I don't care. I love hearing about it. Tell me.
Okay, thank you, my dear. Well, I'll try to give this the Reader's Digest condensed version, because I can kind of go off on a lot over these many, many, many years. But suffice it to be said that I was, okay, I wanted to be a psychologist. And from high school on, and we didn't have psychology in high school to study, but I was like reading Freud, and I was just so interested in why are people the way they are? And I felt like I wanted to help people be healthier, mentally healthy. And I was just very intrigued by it. So I went to college, then a small liberal arts college in my home state of Indiana. The great state. I don't like to brag, but I just thought I'd mention it. Anywho, so I majored in psychology and graduated, and it just didn't pan out. I was going to go to grad school, and it didn't pan out for me to do that. And that was very confusing to me, because I thought for sure that's what I was going to do. That's what I was planning to do. But life had other plans. No, I won't say that life had other plans, because I think that's a misconception. Life doesn't have plans for us. It's life matching up with our vibration. So I would like to correct myself for saying that. It's not like, well, I thought I was going this path, but no, life had this path laid out for me. That is not actually the case, as I understand it from Abraham. But so it went in a different direction, but that was in response to what I was thinking and feeling at the time. And of course, I had no idea of how things really do work vibrationally and energetically. That was just years away. But anyhow, so I went through a time of great confusion. I thought, by golly, I'm going to go to Los Angeles and study with a fellow who was quite he was on talk shows. He had become famous, and he had this thing called the primal scream. And I thought, well, that's the primal scream. And it basically consisted of people going into rooms and screaming their lungs out to get out their frustrations and their whatever was tripping them up. And I thought, well, that is a good approach as any. And I thought, I'll do that. So this girl from Indiana flies to LA, North Los Angeles, and I thought, I'm going to interview with the wife their names are escaping me at the moment. It'll come to me in the middle of the night. But anywho, I go out there and I'm like, I want to work for you. And I just love seeing you guys on TV. I mean, of all the crazy things. And she's like, yes. She says, well, the therapy will be $4,000. You have to do the therapy first before you can train to be a therapist yourself. And that was about $3,999 more than I currently had. But I'd set my hopes on this because I felt like this was just perfect for me. And yet it wasn't meant to be. So I came back to Indiana and I was really confused. But on the way to Indiana, I had sort of an opening of an experience that I felt was causing me a great deal of change. So I was feeling so bummed out by this experience in North Hollywood that didn't go like I thought. And then we were flying over the Grand Canyon and the pilot announced, this is the Grand Canyon. It was really rather obvious, but anyway, then they had music playing in those days. You didn't have your own music. They just played it for you. And it was John Denver singing Sunshine on My Shoulder, Makes Me Happy. And there was sunshine coming in. I was on this side of the plane by the window, and it came in. And then I looked at the Grand Canyon and I thought, my life is like a Grand Canyon. And then I just started to cry and just cry and cry and cry and cry and cry. And, but it wasn't all like sad. It was like, I feel like there's something more. I missed something really critical. I've had many, many of those experiences over the years, but this was my first, I've missed something critical experience. And I just knew that, and I had been pretty much an atheist in college. It was a Quaker school, but I didn't partake of any of that. And I
did not know that. Okay, so you were an atheist at one point.
But as a child, I always went to church up through, and my mom made sure of that when I was as a teen and everything. I had to go to church in order to have dates. If I had a date on Saturday night, I had to go to church on Sunday. And so, yeah, I was there. But so I was definitely a churchgoer and a church believer as a child. I won't say that.
Because you wanted those dates.
I did want those dates. And I would sit there just staring at the minister, and everything I was going through, I was reliving my date from the night before. And he always thought, wow, she is the most attentive little person to come to my church. And I wasn't thinking about that at all, but that did me, it stood me in good stead, we shall say. But so then I came back, and I'd been around Buddhists and a lot of people, Hindus and other folks. I was finding a few of those people in college, and people that were not like from my small town. They, had exposure to other religions and things. And I thought, I don't know what form this experience is going to take, but I do think that, I could be a Hindu, a Buddhist, who knows? I really didn't think much about Christianity. That was kind of not high on my list, but I thought, I do believe that I am on my path to something. And so then my mom says, oh, there's a mother-daughter banquet at the church on Saturday night. And would you go? And I'm like, oh, okay, I really don't want to. And then I thought, well, that's going to be an issue if I don't. So I did. So that kind of, I thought that's got nothing to do with my inner journey, but I'll go, to keep her happy. I'm an only child, by the way. Mm-hmm. And my parents are older. We're older. I was very close with my mom in many ways, and she looked to me for to be a good person and to be proud of me and such. So did you have anything you wanted to add there, or should I just go ahead with this?
No, just keep going. Yeah. Okay. I'm anxious. What happened when you went? Something happened there at that baby daughter thing?
Yeah. So it was really, it was nice. The people were really loving. And so the church had changed to a new group. And the group before was kind of regular Christian. This was evangelical Christian. And so I'd never really been around that so much about where you must be born again. But I will say they were so loving. And I was looking for something. I was just very, very susceptible to anything that, would seem like something that would make sense overall, an overall guiding. I just wanted something. I wanted somebody to say, hey, do this and don't do that. And you'll find God. And so anyway, a few weeks into that, and I did go with her several times. We were at prayer meeting on a Wednesday night, and the minister, who was really charismatic and fantastic and just brought the Bible to life, I will have to say. I saw my hand, he says, does anybody want to receive Christ as Savior? And I see my hand go up, and I'm like, what did you just do? And so I guess I do. And yeah, so I was an evangelical Christian for 15 years, and I really loved it. And so I met a fellow in church and married him and had 2 sons. And then through no fault of his own, he had a schizophrenic breakdown. I got stage 4 cancer. Not that that's funny, but it's kind of like what else can go wrong? And so we divorced. And then I went through chemotherapy and radiation, and the church people were very, very, very helpful. It was a really wonderful time. And then I met a new fellow through a Christian pen pal club from back then. This is before the internet so much, and probably at all. Yeah, it was almost before computers, but anyway, in the 1980s, then I remarried, and he was a Christian with 2 sons, and I had 2 sons, and he moved us to Oregon, and that's where we lived the next 15 years after that. And 6 years after that, he passed away. 6 years after we married, he passed away suddenly from a heart arrhythmia, apparently. That's all they could figure out. And then we had a little daughter. She's now 32. Her name is Emily. And anyway, so I ended up in Ashland, Oregon, this incredible little town, a very, very metaphysical town, I might add. And I had some real doubts about Christianity at that point. I just didn't know about certain things, and that was really heck to go through, because I thought if I'm making a mistake by coming away from Christianity, that's a really big mistake. Because if indeed your afterlife depends on that, then you don't want to get it wrong. But I couldn't. And then the gay issue came up with the church, and they became more outspoken about that. And I thought, I cannot think of that God in his love really wants to put gays out of the church or make them different than they are. That was the straw that broke the camel's back for me. And I had to leave the church, and many friends, that was after my husband died, but many dear friends. And that was very, very tough, because I had some wonderful friends there and so much love. But, I had to be true to myself. And I knew that if I wasn't true to myself, that was going to be rough on me, because I I knew that I had enough sense to know that I needed to not put myself under a lot of stress any more than was kind of inevitable in my situation, because I had stage 4 cancer, and I didn't particularly want that again, obviously.
So just to talk about that for a second, and just for a second, that you did, you did get in remission, or it's gone. Yeah. Great. As I know. Okay, wonderful. From the chemo and the radiation, at that time you didn't know law of attraction and all of that, really, but
right.
But, yeah.
I'm glad you mentioned that, though, because there was another very pivotal thing that happened during that time. And so I've been only reading Christian books during my Christian years. And then I'm like, why would God have me get this? Because if God allows everything and it's all about God, then why do I have this? Because I've been the most dedicated Christian. Because when I do something like, whatever, it's like I have to do it to every little tiny iota, every dot and tittle, or whatever they call it in the Bible. But so I'm like, wait a minute. And so I started reading some library books, and one of them, the one that's changed my life, just by the title, said Mind as Healer, Mind as Slayer. It was a tome, and it was full of case studies way back when, in the 1980s, maybe late 70s, actually, when it was written, about how people's stress levels and attitudes affected their health, specifically with regard to cancer. And it was just an eye-opener to me, because I thought, I'm trusting God, but in a way, I know that I'm more stressed than I need to be, and I should be. And maybe that's kind of where I need to give more emphasis. So that was in the back of my mind then, as I remarried and went to Oregon and then left the church.
Question. So did you find that book while you were in treatment for the cancer, or so you obviously think that book had some effect on your getting well?
It did. It did. And there was another book as well so I had some therapy with the local fella down at the end of the street. I mean, way down. Small town here. You go down quite a few blocks, and you're at the end of Main Street, and it is is our little psychological center in our town. And I told my mom, I said, I feel like I really need to go down there to that. And they won't charge me much, because I know it's a sliding scale. I had no money. We were getting divorced and everything. And I was living with my parents for 5 years. My sons and I lived with my parents. So anyway, my mom says, in true small town fashion, she's like, I don't really like for our car to be seen down there at the mental health place. And I'm like, well, then I'll try to park around the back. And so I did. I started going down there. So anyway, and I don't know what I was expecting, but from my college days, I expected something kind of Freudian. We were going to dig into my past. I thought that's what it was. And lo and behold, this fellow, Marty, who was my therapist, he says, I use a book. He had a stack of these books, all the same book, and it was called Help Yourself to Happiness. And I thought, well, that sounds like a kind of a junky sort of Freudian approach. I mean, I thought it was going to be really different from that. And so what he did was, so this is another piece of my puzzle. It was called cognitive therapy, or cognitive behavior therapy, I think. And so I got that book and I read it, and then I had to do homework every week. And so what it was, so you would think back on some time that in your week that you had an upset over anything, and you would write out that on this paper that he gave me. I would write that out. Then I would think then I would write down what thoughts was I thinking at that time, and then on the far right hand side, I would write down what could I have been thinking to feel better. I mean, when I look back on it, this was 1981, and I think back on that, and at first I wasn't sold on it for quite a while, because to me, the real kinds of psychology and psychiatry had to do with this in-depth digging, and this wasn't digging at all. This was just kind of the superficial stuff, but I did it, and I did feel better, and so then we were done with that, I suppose, after about 6 months. And I just, it was good. And then little by little, I just kept getting better and better. I did have the chemo and the radiation and surgery, but I got better and better, because I knew that I had to really address my thought habits. And I knew I'd been under so much stress with the divorce, and why is he like that? And why did God allow that? And And one day I got up and I just told myself, you know what? You can't do that anymore. You don't have the luxury of doing that anymore. You're going to quit that. And I'm like, do I have to? I'm talking to myself, yes, you have to. No, I don't want to. And it was, so I don't minimize how hard it is sometimes to change habits of thought. And to this day, I'm not saying I got it down pat, but it was really hard then. But I also knew how extremely valuable it is to focus in new, better feeling ways. So I had those things in place from that mind is healer, mind is slayer, and help yourself to happiness, and going forward then into more Christianity for quite a few years. But then as soon as my husband died, I was really ready to start exploring, and not that I wanted him to die by any means, but it was then I felt free to leave the church and to just explore all around in Ashland, Oregon. I went to first of all, meditation. Yay! I was off to that. I was off to every kind of guru kind of thing. I was getting every metaphysical book. I was just like a sponge. I was just taking it all in. And then after a while, and all kinds of seminars and just everything. And the great irony was that I did all this exploration for years before I finally decided I wanted to move to Florida. And my mom by then lived out there with me, and my dad had died. And then my kids were just about raised. The 4 boys were about raised. They were raised. In fact, I waited till they were raised until I moved here.
And Emily was still with you.
Yes. Well, right. Emily, my daughter, was still with me at that time. She was 10. And when I moved, but so I'd done all this exploration, but there's still, it didn't feel like what and I love Unity Church. I love. That was my main bulwark during that time. Unity Church. I adore them. And I just, to this day, the daily word, I just felt was so spot on. And I began opening more and more to that. And some of the farther out things, the giant crystals and the llamas, and that kind of fell by the wayside. But that unity, llamas. Well, I mean, by llamas, I mean, there are just some really unusual people in Ashland that have, like, there was one, he was a guru type fellow who used to be a realtor, but he became a guru and a healer. And he had these giant crystals, and you'd go to his house and be on the table, and then this giant amethyst crystal underneath. I don't know how much that might have weighed. And he had llamas out back, and he just, it was so picturesque and so far out. It was really, really far out, but it was so fun, and it was so part of my exploration. And yet it really wasn't me. It wasn't me, but it was so fun to explore. But who I really was spiritually still was very amorphous. And so then the great irony was that Abraham Hicks, I learned after the fact, was giving seminars occasionally, maybe once a year or so, actually, in this little town of Ashland, Oregon, up just up the street from me in a hotel, of course, a hotel. And so but I had, of all the explorations, I never ran onto them. Then I moved to Oregon, and mainly because I needed a warmer climate, not Oregon, Florida. And I thought, I'm just going to start a new life here. But I had some health issues that really made me feel I needed heat. I needed more warmth. And so I thought, I did this for myself. So I moved here, and it was the coldest winter they'd had. And my realtor said, bring your winter coat. And I did. And I'm out walking the dog around, and I'm thinking, this isn't that warm. This is really not that warm. And the town is called Winter Springs, and the street over there is further away. And I'm thinking, I don't know. But then I thought, wait a minute. This is the best place. I can't do anything better for myself. I mean, I could go to Miami, but basically I was fairly close to Miami already. And I didn't see that was going to make a huge difference. But I did think about Miami and I think Miami's great. It's wonderful.
Yeah, beautiful. Yeah.
If you've been thinking about coaching with me and how it could help you transform your relationship with your body and food, and yes, even release weight, or if you'd like help with anxiety, depression, self-confidence, money, or health, I'd love to work with you. Our focus in your session is always to help you feel better emotionally and float up the emotional scale. You will find that as I calibrate you to feeling better, and as you practice alignment during the week, you might be guided to a certain food plan or certain physical activities, and it will feel differently than all those other times because it will be from a place of inspiration, not from a place of desperation, where you are constantly trying to force change. In other words, imagine being inspired to do things you've been wanting to do for years without much efforting at all, without a big struggle. This is the way the law of attraction works. I know, like me, you were probably taught that things need to be difficult in order to make progress in any area of your life, but that simply is not true. There is an easier way, and I want to share this process with you. If this resonates with you, go to deliciousalisgnment.com/coaching to find out more or to book your coaching sessions. I can't wait to meet you.
So go ahead.
So anywho, yeah, so in the mail comes a little brown box, and this is from my friend Alice, who was one of my close friends during my exploration times.
When you're in Florida?
I'm in Florida now, but it's coming from Oregon.
Okay.
This little box, and Alice was in Oregon. And so, and I'm looking around at every corner seems to have a bigger church, and I'm thinking I would like to be with, I like to meet people, but I don't know that these churches are going to be my thing. And so then this comes a box full with tapes, with Abraham Hicks tapes. And so I thought, well, let's see what this is about, because I only knew the neighbors. I worked from home with a audiobook company, Blackstone Audiobooks, and I continued that for a while after I moved here. And I love, oh my gosh, that was such a wonderful job. And so, but anywho, I didn't know anybody much, and so anyway, I listened to these tapes, and I thought, well, that's kind of different. I mean, it's a lot like what I know, but not totally. And there's some strange stuff. And it talked about Esther speeding in her car, and then she would get this kind of sense of just sort of this inner sense that she needed to slow down because of the police and so forth. And that threw me for a loop. I thought, I don't know, because I mean, I'm a law obeyer to the max. And I'm like, I don't think I can handle this. And there were a few other things that just seemed a little edgy. And, but I thought, well, I guess I'll listen to more of it. And so I sat and at my kitchen table and listened to more and more and more and more. And pretty soon I'm like, I think I really like this a lot. And that's how I discovered Abraham Hicks. That was almost 22 years ago, right when I moved here. And so I've been here ever since, and I've been utterly enchanted with Abraham Hicks ever since. They have been my go-to thing. And I cannot begin to say enough about how that perspective has met me where I was at the time, which of course I had this hodgepodge of different things I'd been exposed to and interested in. And then just trying to think, kind of putting it all together. And for me, it came together and it continues to come together. It continues to grow with me. I never feel, and of course, Abraham, emphasizes this. It's like you never arrive at your destination, because with all of this, it's about expansion, and you're always expanding, and there's always more to learn and experience, and more contrast, which you'll find yourself, in the step one moment of not really liking something, but you always have that opportunity to turn it around through your thinking and feeling, and voila, that's my story. Thank you for asking.
Yeah. Wow, I learned some new things about you. I didn't know you were atheist early on, and those books that you came across that really were very law of attraction-ish and were like preparing you. It's almost like everything was, well, of course it is. It's everything is preparing us for the next thing and the next thing and the next thing. Yeah. And I love that. And then of course you eventually met Mark, and your wonderful Mark. He is just such a wonderful guy. I would go to your house and you and Mark would have these Abraham meetings. I think that's how I found Abraham. I know somebody told me about Abraham, years earlier, but I went in one ear and out the other. I just wasn't ready. But for some reason, well, I was into The Secret. We were very much into The Secret. And then somebody told me about your meeting, or I went to a meetup and there you were, and somebody announced your meeting. I'm not really sure, but I went to your meeting, and then we just kept going and going to your house. And I just was always really impressed with, not only your knowledge of Abraham, but you would conduct the meetings in a way that I could tell that you wanted everyone to be able to ask their questions and get their questions answered. And and you did not really jump in unless someone said, I really want to know what Karen thinks about this. And then it was just like, oh my gosh, all of this like incredible wisdom about an insight. And but you was just so humble about it. and then people, but I really want to know what Karen thinks. And then we would all just like listen and wait on your every word. And of course you're so funny and playful, and you just really exhibited this way of thinking and being. Like you lived it. You and Mark live it. Like you just so playful and so fun, and just exude this fun and to model this way of living. And I do have to tell the one story that I love, that we'd love to talk about. You like to bring it up when my son was, about 18, 17. You went through that whole thing to me, and he kept playing video games. And I was so worried that he was, addicted to video gaming. And I would bring that to the meeting, and what would Abraham say about that? And then, especially at his 18 years old, I mean, he's an adult, and even younger. I mean, the discussion was always like, well, get out of his way. And oh my God, that was like probably a good couple of years that I kept bringing that subject to you guys. And look at him now. I got out of his way. I kept practicing, not worrying, just seeing him as whole and complete, seeing everything all as well, seeing him as, thriving and having a wonderful life. And now he's a big YouTube, like, gaming celebrity, bought his first house at like 24 years old, and doing amazingly well. So those meetings made such a huge impact on my life, my marriage. I mean, everything, really.
I love hearing that. That really renews my desire to want to go to the, to renew these meetings again. Thank you so much for saying that, Rhonda.
Yeah, yeah. And Mark was always, equally just so adding so much to the meetings, and the way that he would always just acknowledge everyone and make sure nobody was left out, like no child left behind. He would just make sure everyone at the meeting would be, acknowledged in some way, and just give them something, like just he has this wonderful way of just making people feel special. Yeah. Yeah. So both of you really just love that, reminiscing about that. And then, of course, I just remember you, like, cataloging Abraham Hicks cassettes. And I mean, studying this stuff, writing books. You have written multiple books, and your soul songs, which are like beautiful little poems, if you will, or thoughts for the day that just exemplify all these teachings. And so what are you up to now? So this meeting that you gotta possibly start, just living your lives. and what would you say, how your life changed once you learned about Abraham?
Yeah, and of course it's still changing.
Yes.
I mean, it just continues. I love how it is truly a journey, and it's but yeah, when I started seeing things differently, I remember at one point, and this was before Mark and I were together, I was near my little house, which is actually just not far from here, and I just remember one day just feeling like my mind is so quiet. My mind is just, it felt almost weird. It felt, because, I was so used to having this, oh, I should worry about this, I should worry about that. Oh, wait a minute, I'm not worried about that right now, so I need to do that. And so then when I started not doing that as much, everything just felt very quiet. And I still have that today. So, when I know that I'm in control of allowing that to be very, very quiet. And when I meditate, I'm really, really into meditation right now still, but I say really consistently into it for the past, during this past year, I would say this whole past year, and really getting serious about it, and which there's nothing serious going on here, so it's not, I don't mean really, really serious, but I mean just doing it consistently. And then I have so many synchronicities that I experience as a result of that. And I was just sharing with my granddaughter, who was here for 6 weeks, and she just turned 13. And of course, I'd love for her to know more about all of this, but she's not really asking those questions. So I try to refrain from answering them. But I love how I can meditate and see results from it. Not immediately necessarily, but I will see them probably that day and definitely that week. And what really set me into meditating consistently was, I heard Abraham say about Esther, when Esther meditates, she knows she's going to have a good day. I thought, well, that's pretty strong cause and effect. And then Abraham says, and when Esther meditates every day of the week, she knows she's going to have a good week. And I thought, I like it, because I'm always looking for cause and effect. If I do this, I want this to happen. I want there to be consistency. And I must say that with that meditation, so we had a few incidents where I felt like our lives were playing out like that way when my granddaughter was here, and she just went home on Saturday, and I rode with her on the plane, but then I set it up, unlike usual, to come right back immediately, because I thought instead of then they have to take me to their home and then they have to bring me back to the airport and we have to fiddle around, and I already had a good visit with her. So I thought so I set it up. Well, in the meantime, the flights had gotten all delayed, both our flight out there and the flight back, and they kept changing it. And it looked as if those were not going to work out. And so she watched this whole process, and then I just said, and I know that this is part of the good we can do for ourselves, is to say it'll be okay. You know, maybe I won't get to go home right tonight like I thought, but it'll be okay. Okay, so I go home with her for a night or whatever. You know, I don't have to rush back. Whatever. I just made it okay. Well, with all these constant changes, and then we got on the plane 3 hours later than we were supposed to get on it. But then when we get into Houston, I said, I don't know if my flight back is, I don't know. Would you just help me, Claire, see how this goes before she goes to find her mother, who was waiting there for her. But anyway, she goes, Gigi, look, right there's your flight. And they're getting on right now. I'm like, what? And so I go, okay, bye. And we're blowing each other kisses in the airport. Bye, Gigi, bye, Gigi. And so I go right down and walk right from off of one plane onto the other, and they're boarding. And I'm like, and it was, we got home. Mark got me home at 4 a.m, and I hadn't slept a wink because I couldn't stop being so exhilarated over how that was so perfect. And how could that even be with all those changes and all that? And I just, but I know how it can be.
Mm-hmm.
I aligned. I took time to align. I took time to meditate, for sure, because I find it makes a huge difference in my day. It's just that pragmatic. And so, and then she got to see, she goes, wow, Gigi, that worked out. And I'm like, yeah, I really did. And we had other little instances like that. And I just love where some, you know, and Abraham says, you know, it's what you live that really is, you know, no words can, you know, words don't teach, like somebody observing your life. And I felt so thrilled. And I was just sitting there thrilled for like over 2 hours coming back from Houston, thinking this stuff works. It works in the most pragmatic ways. It works in tiny ways. It works in huge ways. And it gives me goose flesh, thrill bumps as we talk about it now, because it does work. And we have an inner being that knows what we want to the most microscopic detail and is ever at work on our behalf to bring all that about. And all we got to do is let go of our unhappiness. That's all we got to do.
Yeah. Yes, exactly. That's all we got to do. But we don't need to figure out the how. We don't need to keep track of what we want. We don't need to keep track of our desires. Like the universe, source knows what we want. No, it's not going to forget what we desire. And yeah. So
and Abraham, it's always updating it too, because we are always updating, and it's keeping right up with us. And it wants this. But Abraham says that I heard them say this week that it's even better because they remember all of our desires, some that we've kind of even forgotten about, and they put them all together in such a special way as we open up and allow them to come to us, that the whole is bigger than the sum of the parts. Wait a minute. Yeah, the whole is bigger than the sum of the parts, or something like that. Well, yeah, that. And it is that. And I love for people to know this. And I also know that countless people don't care to know it. They're not ready to know it. And that doesn't have to bother me one bit, because we who do know it can live it and get all of the benefit from it to
Yeah.
the full.
Yeah, beautifully said. And for the longest time, I thought I'm really not interested in any other kind of teaching right now. For so long, I would read like so many different kind of spiritual books, but then I found Abraham Hicks, and I was just focused on that. And then recently, in the last couple of years, as you know, I got interested in what Gina Mallison is doing, and I learned became a Mallison method practitioner and a coach. I never would have thought. I thought I was going to be a writer for the rest of my life. And I mean, I'm still writing, but I would have never predicted that I would be a coach doing what I'm doing. I never, but I just kept going with what's lighting up, what feels good now. And not even like things not even making sense a lot of times. Like, why am I guided to do this? Why am I guided to write this book? What? And just like trusting it and going with it.
Yes, exactly. You exemplify that so much. And I would like to add too that I believe, like, I am, as much as I adore Abraham, and I mean, I adore them, but you know what? And one thing with my, not just my group, but Abraham Fun, I feel like when people share from other sources, unless it's something really, at odds with just common good sense and being a good person, I feel like there's Abraham, quote unquote, so many different places. I've never felt like I wanted to restrict anything, and some people do. They say this is just for Abraham quotes and nothing else, and I certainly understand and respect that. That's fine. But I feel like there's so much. There's just so. And I just heard Abraham say this week, we're not your last teacher. We're not your last. And they don't want to be our last. And the universe is just full of information as we yield up, as we let go of our limitations. And who knows where it's going to come from? And who knows what we're going to be doing? And that's the beauty and the grandeur of just learning to release resistance and open up to what is available.
Yes, and I've gotten into some other channelers now, like Sarah Landon and Wiola, just getting so much.
Okay.
They're like I'm loving Sarah Landon. So I have, I've opened up to hearing the message from other sources. It's just like everyone's saying the same thing sort of, but they're saying it in using different words, having a different vocabulary. I mean, I love listening to Sarah Landon. I love going to Wiola and asking them questions whenever I get that opportunity. And so like this expansion has just, it's just like, oh, you just keep following the light. That's what I keep saying. And to me, that's making sense now. Like, what's lighting up here? What's lighting up here? And sometimes like it doesn't even make sense. And yet I trust that my inner being knows the bigger picture. My inner being is guiding me to these things for a reason, for my highest good, for me.
Absolutely. I love that. I love that. Follow, because we want to follow that inside. Our inner being is so wise and knows exactly what we want, and as I've said earlier, and exactly how to get us there. And it's such a dynamic process. It's not about trying to copy anybody, but it's about feeling our way there. And like you say, what lights up now. And so then when you go from a static kind of okay, well, let's read this scripture type thing, which I also loved for many years, but then you go into a dynamic back and forth. It's just so alive, the relationship we have with our inner beings.
Yes.
I like it.
Very good. So Karen, please tell people about your group, Abraham Fun, on Facebook, or anything else
Yes.
you want to tell people about. Yeah.
Okie dokie. Well, it's on Facebook. The group is Abraham Fun. I think we started in 2010, so we've been going for a while. We're rather adept at whatever whatever being on Facebook. You have to be on Facebook. That's all it takes. And then you just go and you can request to be in the group, and you automatically get added to the group. There's no strings attached, and no malarkey. There's nothing, and it's very easy. And being in the group is very easy. And if you get thrown out of that group, it's very unlikely. Let's put it this way. I encourage you.
You must really do something. You must be banned from Facebook. Yeah.
Really. We just welcome everybody, and we try to have a good time, and we have some laughs because I'm big on that. And so that is, just come to Facebook and Abraham Fun. And then eventually, as I say, we hope to have meetings here in the Central Florida area at the Oviedo Mall. But I will share that on in Abraham Fun also for those folks who might be in this area and might be able to attend in person. And so we will share more about that in due time.
Wonderful. And that's in Central Florida, if anyone is interested or lives in Central Florida. So great. Well, thank you so much, Karen. This has been just so much fun, of course. So great to catch up with you. And again, thank you for sharing your story.
My great pleasure and honor, Rhonda. And I love all that you're doing, and keep it up, my dear. I know you will. And I can't wait to see how things continue to unfold for your coaching, your writing, all aspects of your outreach and fun.
Thank you so much.
Certainly.
Here are the 10 takeaways from this interview. 1. You don't need to figure out why something happened. Just keep focusing on how to relieve stress and feel better. 2. Being true to yourself is good for your health. Trying to please others all the time is not. 3. The moment one desire is achieved, you have another, and another, and another. There's always more. 4. Everything is preparing you for the next thing, and you are summoning it all with your thoughts. 5. You have an inner being that knows what you want to the most microscopic detail and is always working on your behalf to bring it all about. 6. Your job is to relax, chill, and have fun. 7. Consistent meditation of only 5 minutes twice a day, for example, will enhance your life and lead to emotional and physical well-being, as well as synchronicities that will delight and surprise you. 8. You don't need to keep track of your desires because Source is keeping track of them for you. 9. It's not about trying to copy anybody. It's about feeling your way there. And 10. Life is responding to what you are thinking and feeling. I hope you enjoyed my interview with Karen Money Williams. You can connect with Karen on Facebook at Soul Song Karen or by joining her Facebook group, Abraham Fun. You can also learn more about Karen and her books by going to her website, KarenMoneyWilliams.com. Find all the other links mentioned in this podcast at deliciousalignment.com/podcast. I've got wonderful guests lined up for you in the coming months with people who have used the law of attraction to learn how to love their bodies and their food, release weight, as well as attract more health and happiness into their lives. Do you know someone who could benefit from the Delicious Alignment message? If so, help me spread the word by sharing this podcast with others. Thanks again for listening. I love hearing how this show is making a difference in your life.